All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are well and doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we're going to look at today's slate, brainstorm it, see who's standing out, discuss some of the injury news, discuss that. And then after that, 5:30 p.m., we'll have the pre-lock show, VIP members only there. Link in the description if you're interested in that. All right, let's get into it, guys. Nice 6-game slate on deck. Nothing too crazy. Michael Ortiz, good to see you, man. He said, "Good morning, Josiah. I'm looking forward to winning money." Agreed. Again, finished second and a 4,000. Nice, man. Thanks, DFS Army, helping me understand my process. Love to see it. Glad things are going well for you, Michael. All right. Let's get into today's slate. Also, sorry to everyone. I didn't have any screenshots to share or anything like that. Didn't have time to go through it all, but hopefully we'll have plenty to look at tomorrow. Starting off, we have the Lakers going up against the Charlotte Hornets. Per usual, we have LeBron James and Anthony Davis listed as questionable. Who knows who will play here? Hopefully they both will, so there's nothing to worry about. Anthony Davis is my top priority here. We know the Hornets are still struggling against centers. Anthony Davis is one of the better centers in the league, and so he's the guy I'm looking to prioritize here. Outside of that, Charlotte has improved a decent amount recently against just defensively. And really, the only position that they're struggling at is guarding centers. And so LeBron James is always fine, but at 10K, he's looking a little pricey for me. I don't really like forcing exposure to guys like Russell uh, in spots like this. Total's fine at 227. Spread's pretty wide, but just not expecting too much out of him there. And then Reeves and Rui and crew, I don't look at too closely when everyone's healthy. So not loving the Lakers, but I do like Anthony Davis a lot. And as long as he plays tonight, he's someone I'm looking at prioritizing. Hornets are a team that's a little hard to talk about right now. Let me refresh and just make sure I'm up to date. Yeah, LaMelo Ball is listed as TBD. If he's going to play or not, that matters a lot. Cody Martin is listed as TBD, also a piece that matters a decent bit. And then, of course, Kyle Lowry's out, Frank's out. A lot of these other guys have been out for a while. I am only looking at the Hornets if LaMelo Ball is out. If LaMelo plays, then I'm not overly excited about any of these pieces. If they show up a little bit, that's fine, but I'm not going to force it. But as of right now, I think we have it set up where we're assuming LaMelo Ball is going to get ruled out. And so guys like Bridges, Miller, Nick Richards are all looking like very viable options. And if they don't show up enough for me, I am willing to get some leverage here. I don't think we're going to see low ownership on the Hornets. So they're not typically, or they're not on my radar right now as leverage plays because it's going to be hard for me to get over the field on them because I expect guys like Bridges and Miller in particular to be pretty chalky on this slate. And again, for good reason, as long as LaMelo Ball ends up not playing. But if he plays, I'm just going to fade these guys. And then PJ Washington, Cody, Bryce McGowan's is okay if Cody Martin ends up not playing. They're fine, but again, not overly excited about it. Just a low total game for widespread. Trying to not go crazy here, but if injury news goes the wrong way, we might have to. Thomas Dye, what's up, man? Dave, good morning. Agreed. Appreciate you, man. And if you all could hit the like, share, and subscribe button, it really does help the channel grow and also helps, just make sure that we're able to keep going. So I always appreciate the support. We talked about the Hornets. Next up, we have the Dallas Mavericks. And this team is another team, kind of like the Hornets, a little hard to predict too much. Kyrie Irving is in play. Luka Doncic is questionable, but he was at shoot around. So I'm thinking we can probably expect him to play tonight. And then Cleveland is questionable, and then everyone else has been out for a while now. It's not really worth going into the what-if scenarios on Doncic. I think everybody knows at this point if he's out, Kyrie Irving, Tim Hardaway are much more viable plays, but it's looking like he's going to play, so it's, per usual, just play Luka here. You can make an argument for Kyrie at 8,500. That's not a bad price tag on him. Sim Model also likes Kyrie a little bit, but it prioritizes James Harden over Kyrie, so Not going too crazy here, but like I said, it's really just Luka or bust, in my opinion, with Kyrie Irving like a viable GPP play. For the Sixers, we know Joel Embiid's going to be out for a good chunk of time. Nicholas Batum's already ruled out. The thing that matters the most to me for the Sixers tonight is Tobias Harris. He's questionable. He missed last game. They didn't play yesterday, so he's going through an illness. So it's not really, I mean, I don't know what kind of illness it is or how physical it is, but it's not like a knee injury or hand injury or anything like that. It's really just him getting over this cold or sickness or whatever it is. So hopefully he'll play tonight. Tobias Harris is still a little too cheap at 7,400. As long as he's still in decent form, like he's been in good form for a while, totally fine going right back to him. And hopefully the ownership will remain relatively low. I think he's been in such good form, it's going to be hard for people not to go there. So I think he will be pretty chalky, but would love if he's not as high owned as people would expect. And then Maxey at 9,100, very viable. He's been in much better form lately. Upside, 60-point upside is definitely there. The weird thing on this slate is that you're really thinking about Curry or Maxey. I think there's better options, but if you're already looking at the guard spot as a viable pay-up option for you, you're kind of picking between those two. So ultimately, I'm not overexcited, but I think Maxey and Curry are viable GPP plays. I would still prefer just paying up to Doncic, but obviously we have to wait and see how everything falls into place with different news and how lineup construction ends up working out by the time we get closer to lock. Speaking of pre-lock show, 5:30 p.m., that show's way more focused on execution. I show what I'm doing in the domination station. We'll talk through guys we're actually forcing exposure to. A lot less theory on that one. But if you're not able to join it, that's fine too. But if you're interested, link is in the description. Feel free to use promo code BOB for a 10% discount there. Thomas said maybe this week there will be late changes due to the deadline. Yeah, trade deadline is coming up. When is that? Let's see. Trade deadline. Yeah, February 8th. Yeah, there's always, this is worth mentioning, Thomas, there's always a slightly increased chance that we might get some late changing news and some guys might not play. It happens. I feel like it hasn't happened to me in a good bit, but I'm probably just jinxing myself on that. But there's definitely a risk of that happening post-lock. Luca agreed, BMAC. Good morning, Daniel. Hope you're doing all right. BMAC said if Harris is out, then I'm taking shots on Morris for sure. I think that makes total sense, especially if he ends up starting. But with Batum out, we can take shots on the forwards for this team if Harris gets ruled out. But I'm interested in seeing what that starting lineup looks like. What's up, Zolo? Hope you're doing all right, man. All right. So, yeah, I like the Sixers a good bit. I mean, I think Maxey's viable. Harris is viable. Reed is fine. Outside of that, not trying to get too cute here. But if Harris gets ruled out, Maxey becomes much more of a priority for me. And we'll look and make adjustments based off of the starting lineup. Definitely one of the first games on the slate, so we don't have to guess too much there. The Kings are, per usual, looking pretty healthy tonight. So because of that and because of the tough matchup against the Cavs, you can take one-off shots here with like a Sabonis, a Fox, a Murray. Ultimately, I'm not excited about any of the Kings here just because of the tough matchup going up against the Cavs. The matchup for Sabonis can get softer if Jared Allen actually gets ruled out and doesn't play. But Evan Mobley's not someone to, take lightly either. So I'm just not overly excited about the matchup, but I am more interested in taking a shot on Sabonis if Jared Allen gets ruled out. And then I talked about Fox and Murray as viable GPP plays, but I'm not trying to get there currently. I'm not trying to go there as of right now. I just think it's not worth it. But worth mentioning, let's see, Herter. Herter's projecting well. He's also the chalkiest, should be one of the chalkier guys from the Kings today. He's one of those guys, you see the 15% ownership there. Looks like Trey Lyles is seeing a little bit of ownership too. Not excited about it. Don't want to have Herter as a core play today when this team is healthy. He is a streaky shooter, so he's another one of those guys who are just viable, but he's not someone you're excited to play. There's not really any of those guys here for me. All right, moving on. The Cavs are interesting. Donovan Mitchell still 97 in that upper tier of being very pricey. Not looking like he's going to be too chalky. Matchup against the Kings. Oh, we missed something. I think this is pretty obvious, but this Mavs Sixers game, highest total on the slate. You guys know I always force exposure to the studs in this spot, and that's one of the reasons why I'm probably going to be around field weight on Maxey, and I'm hoping I can go over on Harris. And of course, depending on the news, Kelly O and the rest of those guys too. Love that game. Anyway, back to this. If Jared Allen's out, that's a nice boost to Evan Mobley. If Jared Allen plays, I'm not looking at any of the other Cavs outside of Donovan Mitchell is here. What's up, Grayson? Hope you're doing all right. Donnie said Fox is my pay up, hopefully low owned. He's pretty high chance he'll be low owned and the upside's there. So yeah, I'm always okay if it's like your one low owned pivot option. For the Clippers going up against the Hawks, this is another team with a little bit of injury news that makes it a little hard to be too set in your ways as of right now. Paul George is expected to play, so that's nice because I like him. And then Kawhi Leonard is listed as TBD. Not as great because if he gets ruled out, we're playing a shit ton of Clippers. If he doesn't, these guys are a little bit harder to get to. Assuming everyone plays, I like Paul George. Still 7,900, relatively cheap. Good matchup going up against the Hawks. Decent, really good game environment, actually, 242. Close to being the highest on this slate. So Paul George will almost for sure be a leverage play for me. And my thought process here is that he hasn't been in the great form. He's kind of fallen off a little bit from just like a fantasy point standpoint and even scoring standpoint. But he still has his nice high 29% usage rate. And so eventually he will get back into form. And I like targeting these type of guys in good game environments with high totals and decent matchups going up against the Hawks. So if Paul George is going to stay 3% owned, I will be significantly over the field on PG. Honestly, one of my favorite sneaky plays on the slate. Outside of that, it's obvious Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are still very viable in good matchups going up against the Hawks. Their price tag at this point, though, they're no longer in that upper 7K range or even low 8K range. You're paying up for Kawhi and James Harden at this point. Is it worth it? I think so because of the really good game environment. I would say I would have been more against Harden and Leonard if they were chalkier, and I think they should be more popular on this slate. So I just want to have exposure to these three. Wasn't exactly the way I was planning on making lines today, but their ownership is just criminally low. Mason Plumlee, 4,600 is fine. I would be comfortable being around field weight or slightly over the field, around 10-15% on Plumlee. 4,600 is the appropriate price tag for him. But with that being said, if he's not someone I want to have like as a core player or anything like that. His minutes just aren't that set in stone where I feel like he's an obvious play. Also, we haven't gotten any news on Zubac. I think a lot of us are expecting him to not play since he played last night. But obviously, if Zubac does play, Plumlee's not even worth mentioning. But yeah, Clippers are in a good spot. Yeah, I could see Powell starting if one of these guys get ruled out. For the Hawks, again, these guys are always questionable. DeAndre Hunter is questionable. Sadiq Bey is questionable. Clint Capella is out, and he's going to be out for at least the rest of this week, which means the one and only Onyeka Okongwu is a very viable play. At 5,100, he's priced up a little bit higher than he usually is, but he sees and he should see more run tonight, and he's a much better play too, especially if Zubac doesn't play tonight. So we will see what happens here. I mean, I think Okongwu, I can almost guarantee will be a core play for me. I'll be significantly over the field on him just because of the price tag, the role. We don't have a ton of value. I just think he's in a really good spot with Capella out. And 37% still feels a little low to me on a 6-game slate, but could be missing something there. And then Trae Young, totally fine with him. I wasn't looking at him earlier today, and I do think I'm still ranking Maxey and Curry above Young, but I'm okay getting a little bit of exposure to him just because of the good game environment and the close total. You can make a similar argument for Murray, but I want to make sure I have some exposure to Young here. And then outside of that, the other pieces here, Jalen Johnson, Bogdan Bogdanovic, even Murray, I'm more excited to play them if Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter don't play. If it's just one of them, doesn't move the needle for me as much. All right, 2 more games. Next up, we have the Warriors going up against the Nets. This Warriors team has been insane all year, and they just continue to do that. Dario Saric is probable. Andrew Wiggins is doubtful. No real injury news here. The real story is Curry has shown upside again. We haven't seen him have multiple 60-point performances in even like a week span very much at all this season, but it looks like things are starting to turn around for him. With Curry not being very chalky, I'm willing to at least lean into where he is expected to be owned, around 4 to 5% ownership. I'm okay with matching the field on Curry here in a pretty neutral matchup against the Nets in a spot where he can definitely still have a nice ceiling. So 5% ownership, not going to go crazy here. I doubt he'll be a leverage play for me because there's quite a few guards I like in his price range, but I do want to try and get close to field weight exposure. Podziemski is looking like he's projecting well. He's also looking like he's going to be pretty chalky. Again, I don't want him to be a core play for me tonight unless he absolutely has to be, but I'm okay being around 20, 30% exposure there, maybe 40. And I'm not really looking at any of the other pieces here just because of their price tag. It just seems appropriate, not too much upside left on the skin there or left on the bone. This Nets team, I also am not the biggest fan of, but they make a lot of sense today. Ben Simmons is out. DFS is out. Dennis Smith Jr. is probable. Let's look at the game total. 237. Top 3 totals on the slate and a pretty nice spread at 1.5 points. So again, all very viable. Where it gets tough for me is choosing what net to play. Just because I'll be completely honest with you guys, I don't trust these guys. But just because of their price tag and the good game environment and the good matchups, you kind of have to eat this chalk a little bit. Lonnie Walker at 4K has been in really good form. Again, hard for me to argue against him at this point, but he makes total sense. Cam Johnson's also showing up a lot for me in my early runs. Those are really the 2 main pieces here that I'm getting a crap ton of exposure to. But we are seeing, you see Cam Johnson, Lonnie Walker, Nick Claxton showing up a good bit. Cam Thomas is also showing up a bit above ownership, so a little bit of leverage there. Dennis Smith Jr. showing up in some of the early runs. But it looks like I'm going to be under the field on Dinwiddie and Bridges. And that's not something I'm doing on purpose. It's just the way that my lines are looking with the way I'm prioritizing some of the other studs on this slate. I'm not getting as much of the mid-range Bridges or Dinwiddie, which I'm fine with. I've talked about it a lot this year. Golden State hasn't been giving up a ton of points, fantasy points to guards. So I'm fine not having a ton of Dinwiddie. I do get a bit more nervous about Bridges and Cam Thomas. I might have to force exposure to them if I'm not getting as much as I want, but we'll see. Yep. Zola, I feel like you were early on the Lonnie Walker train, but I could be lying. It could have been someone else, but good call out for sure. All right, last game on the slate. We have the Raptors going up against the Pelicans. I think I like this game a bit more than most people do, but I'm not mad about that. Basically, when it comes to injury news tonight for the Raptors, they're pretty healthy. Porter is listed as TBD. That doesn't matter for me as much with Jakob Portal back. I think The hard part about the Raptors at this point is just that they're priced appropriately, which for me means that there's just not that much upside left, in my opinion, for their price tags. So Barrett and Portal and Barnes are all solid, fine plays, but I don't care enough about them to force too much exposure there. Quickly, again, just a pretty neutral matchup. I don't like to pick on the Pelicans too often. Widespread. I like the other side of this game a bit better because the Pelicans are the ones who have the soft matchup. It's not the other way around. So speaking of, I like the Pelicans. So the reason why it's hard, once again, to go too crazy here is because there's a lot of questionable tags. Zion Williamson, questionable. Herb Jones, questionable. Larry Nance Jr., questionable. All three of these guys impact each other first and foremost, but they also impact Trey Murphy. They impact Najee Marshall, guys like that, who we've seen be slate breakers or we've seen in the nuts at low ownership. So I'm keeping a close eye on this injury report just to kind of see what happens here. Especially because Zion Williamson is one of my favorite plays on the slate too. We've been picking on this Raptors team for a while. As long as Zion plays and there's no news of like a minutes limit or anything like that, because he is battling through that foot injury, I am totally comfortable being significantly over the field on Zion. Obviously, if he gets ruled out, then that moves to Brandon Ingram being a play that I like a lot, but he'll be way more chalkier because of the way the news works. And then CJ McCollum is also viable here. But assuming everyone plays, Zion is really my priority, picking on this bad Raptors front court. And then obviously, whatever happens with Herb Jones and Larry Nance will depend on my interest levels on Trey Murphy or Joe Val. But ideally, I won't have to worry about that. So yeah, guys, that's that's the slate in a nutshell. Interesting slate, interesting injury news. We're gonna have to keep a close eye on a lot of it. But I feel like this is one of those slates that there's not too many question marks. I feel like I have a pretty good grip on how a decent amount of this will go, or at least the best way of attacking it with the optimizer. Yeah, you're not wrong. That players do tend to wake up a little bit once they leave the Lakers. Agreed. Larry Nance looks very viable depending on what happens there. Ooh, you're right. A Joe Val revenge game against the Raptors. If Zion's out, I'm not against taking a shot on it, man. But anyway, I'll see you all on the pre-lock show at 5:30 p.m. Not sure if Brandon will be able to join yet. We'll see. But if you're not able to join that, I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one, y'all. Peace out.